The summer sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the backyard of the Sullivan household. Emma Sullivan watched her parents from the window as they bickered over the garden, their voices rising and falling like the tide. It was a familiar sight, one that had become a soundtrack to her childhood. Her father, John, was a stubborn man, and her mother, Karen, a fiery woman who refused to back down. The love that once bound them seemed to have frayed at the edges, leaving behind only resentment and bitterness. Emma sighed and turned away from the window, her heart heavy with the weight of her family's dysfunction. At 23, she felt like she was caught in the crossfire of a battle that had been raging long before she was born. She glanced at her phone, hoping for a distraction. The screen lit up with a message from her brother, Jake. "Can we talk?" Her heart raced. Jake had always been her confidant, the one person who understood the turmoil of their home life. She quickly typed a response, urging him to come over. A year older than her, Jake had always been the protector, the one who shielded her from their parents' harsh words and cold stares. Within an hour, he arrived, his expression a mix of concern and determination. As soon as he stepped inside, Emma could sense that he had something heavy on his mind. "Hey," she said softly, gesturing for him to sit down at the small kitchen table. "What's going on?" Jake ran a hand through his tousled hair, his blue eyes clouded with worry. "I don't know how to say this, Em, but I think Mom and Dad are done. I overheard them arguing last night, and it was bad." Emma felt a pang of dread in her stomach. "What do you mean?" she pressed. "I mean, it's not just the usual stuff. They're talking about separation." "I think Mom is seriously considering it," Jake replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma's heart sank. The thought of her family falling apart was unbearable. "But what about us? What about the house?" Jake leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "I don't know. I just think we need to be prepared for whatever happens. We might have to choose sides." His words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Emma felt a rush of anger. "Choose sides? I don't want to choose. They're our parents." "I know. But if it comes down to it, we have to think about our own futures too," Jake countered, his tone firm. Emma looked down at her hands, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on her. "What if we just talk to them? Try to get them to work it out?" Jake shook his head. "You know how stubborn they are. They won't listen to us." The conversation drifted into silence, and Emma felt the familiar ache of helplessness. She wanted to scream, to shake her parents awake and make them see the damage their fighting was causing. But deep down, she knew that their problems were beyond her control. Chapter 2: A Growing Connection. As the weeks passed, the tension at home only escalated. Emma found herself seeking refuge in her brother's company, their late-night talks becoming a lifeline in the storm of their family chaos. They would sit on the porch, sharing secrets and dreams under the starry sky, reminiscing about happier times when their family had been whole. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Emma leaned against the railing, lost in thought. Jake joined her, a contemplative look on his face. "Do you ever think about what life would be like if they split up?" he asked, breaking the silence. Emma shrugged. "I try not to. It's too painful to think about. But what if it happens? What if we're left with nothing but memories of this place?" Jake's voice was tinged with sadness. Emma turned to face him, her heart racing. "We'll always have each other, right?" Jake's gaze held hers for a moment longer than necessary, a spark of something unspoken flickering between them. "Yeah, always." The atmosphere shifted, and for the first time, Emma noticed the depth of their connection. She had always viewed Jake as her protector, her brother. But in that moment, he felt like something more, a confidant, a safe haven in a world that felt increasingly chaotic. "Jake," she began, hesitating as she searched for the right words. "I don't want to lose you in all of this." "You won't," he promised, stepping closer. "No matter what happens, I'll always be here for you." Emma's heart raced as she met his gaze, the intensity of his blue eyes making her pulse quicken. In that moment, she felt a longing she couldn't quite understand, an ache that transcended sibling bonds. Chapter 3: Crossing Boundaries. As the weeks turned into months, the situation at home continued to deteriorate. Emma found herself spending more time with Jake, their late-night talks evolving into something more intimate. They would often share their fears, their hopes, and an unspoken understanding of each other's pain. One evening, after a particularly heated argument between their parents, Emma found herself sitting on the couch, her heart racing as she replayed the events of the night in her mind. Jake entered the room, his expression mirroring her distress. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern etched on his face. Emma shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm tired of this. Tired of feeling like I'm walking on eggshells." Without thinking, she reached for Jake's hand, seeking comfort. To her surprise, he didn't pull away. Instead, he intertwined his fingers with hers, a warmth spreading through her at the contact. "I know, Em. I feel it too," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Chapter 5: The Breaking Point. The next day, Emma woke to an eerie silence. The usual bickering had ceased, replaced by an unsettling calm. She ventured down the hall to find both her parents sitting at the kitchen table, their faces drawn and weary. "Emma, Jake," Karen said, her voice heavy. "We need to talk." Emma's heart raced as she and Jake exchanged concerned glances. They sat down, bracing themselves for the inevitable news. "Your father and we've decided to separate," Karen said, her voice breaking. "It's for the best." The words hung in the air, a bitter weight that crushed Emma's spirit. She felt tears welling in her eyes as she looked at her mother. "What about us? What about the house?" John sighed, his face filled with regret. "We'll figure it out. But right now, we need to focus on ourselves." Emma felt a mix of anger and sadness. "You're abandoning us. This is your fault," she shouted, her voice trembling with emotion. "Emma, please," Karen pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "We're trying to do what's best for everyone." But the damage was done. The foundation of their family had crumbled, leaving Emma and Jake standing on shaky ground. They felt lost, adrift in a sea of uncertainty. As the days turned into weeks, the reality of their parents' separation sank in. Emma found herself leaning on Jake more than ever, the bond between them deepening as they navigated their grief. They shared late-night conversations filled with raw honesty, their hearts laid bare as they confronted their desires and fears. One evening, as they lay on the porch under the stars, Emma turned to Jake, her heart racing. "Do you think this is all my fault? That we crossed a line?" Jake shook his head, his expression serious. "No. We were just trying to find comfort in each other. It's not your fault that Mom and Dad couldn't figure things out. But what if they find out? What if they blame us?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "They won't. They're too focused on their own issues," Jake reassured her, but uncertainty lingered in the air. Chapter 6: The Reckoning. As the weeks passed, Emma and Jake's relationship deepened, evolving into something both beautiful and terrifying. They stole kisses and whispered secrets under the cover of darkness, their connection becoming an escape from the chaos of their lives. But with each shared moment, the weight of their choices pressed heavily on their shoulders. One fateful night, as they sat on the porch, the tension between them felt palpable. Emma's heart raced as she turned to Jake, the longing in her chest growing stronger. "I don't want to hide anymore," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Jake's gaze met hers, a mix of desire and fear in his eyes. "Neither do I." Before she could think, Emma leaned in, capturing his lips with hers. The kiss ignited a fire within her, a rush of passion that left her breathless. Jake responded eagerly, deepening the kiss as they lost themselves in the moment. But as they pulled away, reality crashed down on them. "We can't keep doing this," Emma said, her heart racing. "What if someone finds out? What if Mom and Dad discover what we've become?" Jake ran a hand through his hair, his expression torn. I know. But it feels so right when I'm with you, Em. I don't want to give this up. Emma's heart raced in her chest, caught between the thrill of their connection and the fear of the consequences. It's wrong, Jake. We're siblings. Are we? He countered, his voice low and intense. We've been each other's rock through all of this. Our parents are falling apart, but we're standing strong together. What we have is real, Emma. The weight of his words settled over her like a heavy blanket, making her heart ache. She wanted to believe him, to embrace the feelings that had blossomed between them, despite the chaos surrounding their family. Yet the enormity of their situation loomed over her like an ominous cloud. Maybe we should take a step back, Emma suggested, her voice trembling. Maybe we need to figure out what we really want, without the pressure of everything else. Jake's face fell, disappointment flashing across his features. You're right. We should think about this. But it's hard to ignore what I feel for you. Emma nodded, her heart heavy. I feel it too, but we need to be careful. This is so complicated. Chapter 7, Consequences. Days turned into weeks, and Emma and Jake tried to navigate their complex feelings while keeping their relationship hidden. They spent more time apart, trying to process their emotions and the reality of their family situation. But the distance only heightened the tension, and the longing they felt for each other grew stronger with each passing day. One evening, as Emma sat alone in her room, she heard an unexpected knock at the door. It was her mother, looking worn and fragile. Can I come in? Karen asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Emma nodded, her heart racing with apprehension. Her mother sat down on the edge of the bed, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and determination. I know things have been hard, and I want you to know that I'm here for you, Karen began, her voice shaking. But I also need to tell you something. Emma held her breath, bracing herself for the worst. I've been talking to your father, and we've decided to seek counseling. We want to try to make things work, for you and Jake, Karen said, her eyes searching Emma's face for understanding. Emma felt a rush of conflicting emotions. On one hand, she was relieved that her parents were willing to work on their relationship. But on the other hand, the thought of their potential reconciliation filled her with dread. What would that mean for her and Jake? Mom, that's great, Emma replied, forcing a smile. I hope it helps. Karen smiled weakly, but there was a lingering sadness in her eyes. I just want our family to be whole again. I want you and Jake to be happy. Emma's heart sank. She couldn't share the truth about her relationship with Jake, not when their parents were trying to mend their fractured marriage. We're just trying to cope with everything, Mom. It's been tough. We'll get through this together, Karen said, standing up to leave. Just remember that I love you both. As the door closed behind her, Emma felt a wave of guilt wash over her. She wanted to support her mother, but she also felt trapped by her own feelings for Jake. That night, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts racing. She knew she had to talk to Jake about what their parents had decided, but she was afraid of how he would react. Chapter 8, The Confrontation. The next day, Emma met Jake at their usual spot in the backyard. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the garden, but Emma felt cold inside. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation ahead. Hey, Jake said, his expression brightening as he approached her. I've missed you. Emma forced a smile, but her heart was heavy. We need to talk, she said, her voice serious. Jake's demeanor shifted, the joy fading from his eyes. What's wrong? Mom and Dad are going to counseling, she said, watching his reaction closely. They want to try to make things work. Jake's face darkened, and he ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Great. Just what we need, more drama. Jake, I know this is hard, but we can't ignore what's happening, Emma continued, her voice trembling. If they reconcile, what does that mean for us? For what we've become? We can't just stop, Jake said, his voice rising. What we have is real. I don't want to lose you, Emma. Emma felt her heart break at his words, but she knew they had to be realistic. But this is a mess. We have to think about our family. If they find out about us. I don't care. Jake interrupted, frustration etched on his face. You're my sister, but you're also the person I want to be with. Why can't we just make this work? Because it's complicated. Emma shouted back, tears streaming down her cheeks. You don't understand what this could do to us, to our family. I can't lose you, but I also can't ignore the consequences. Jake stepped back, his expression a mix of hurt and anger. So what? You want to pretend this never happened? Just act like we're siblings and nothing more? No. Emma cried, feeling desperate. I want to keep you in my life. I don't know how to handle this. Silence hung between them, thick and heavy. Emma's heart raced as she searched Jake's face for a sign of understanding, but all she saw was pain. I can't believe you're willing to throw this away, Jake said, his voice trembling with emotion. I thought we were in this together. Chapter 9, The Decision. The days that followed were filled with tension. Emma and Jake avoided each other, the rift between them growing wider with each passing moment. Emma felt as if she were walking a tightrope, torn between her love for Jake and her loyalty to her family. One evening, as she sat alone in her room, Emma received a text from Jake, a simple message that read, "Can we talk?" Her heart raced as she replied, agreeing to meet him in the backyard. When she arrived, she found him leaning against the porch railing, looking lost in thought. Hey, she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Hey, he replied, his gaze distant. Emma took a deep breath, her heart pounding. I'm sorry about earlier. I didn't mean to push you away. Jake looked up, his expression softening. I get it. It's just, everything feels so chaotic right now. I don't want to lose what we have, but it feels like the world is conspiring against us. Emma stepped closer, her heart aching at the vulnerability in his eyes. I don't want to lose you either, Jake. But we have to think through this carefully. Our parents are trying to rebuild their lives, and we can't just disregard that. Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair in frustration. I know, but it's hard. When I'm with you, everything else fades away. I feel alive. But when I'm not, it's like I'm in this constant state of longing. I feel that too, Emma admitted, her heart racing. But maybe we need to take a step back. Just until things settle down with Mom and Dad. We can't let our feelings cloud our judgment. Jake nodded, but there was a flicker of disappointment in his eyes. I just hate this. I hate that we can't be together without worrying about the consequences. I do too, she whispered, her voice breaking. But I don't want to risk our relationship, our bond, over something so complicated. I need you in my life, Jake. Just maybe not in the way we were before. He stepped closer, their faces inches apart. So what do we do now? How do we go back to being just siblings after everything that's happened? Emma felt a pang of sadness at his words. I don't know. Maybe we just take it one day at a time. We can still support each other through this. You're still my brother, and I want you to be a part of my life no matter what. Jake's gaze softened, and he reached out to cup her cheek. I don't want to stop loving you. I don't want to pretend this isn't real. Tears filled Emma's eyes as she leaned into his touch, feeling the warmth and comfort of their connection. I don't either. But we have to be smart about this. We can't let our... Chapter 10, Treading Lightly. The days turned into weeks, and Emma and Jake tried to navigate their new normal. They spent time together, but the intimacy they once shared was replaced with a cautious distance. They were still siblings, but the unspoken tension lingered beneath the surface, a constant reminder of what they had crossed. As their parents continued counseling, Emma felt a sense of relief wash over her. It seemed that there was a glimmer of hope for their family, but the emotional toll weighed heavily on her. She couldn't shake the feeling that their lives were hanging in the balance, teetering on the edge of something fragile. One afternoon, while Jake was at work, Emma received a phone call from her mother. "Can you come over to the house? I want to talk to you about something important," Karen said, her voice serious. Emma's stomach twisted with anxiety. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, just come over," Karen insisted. When Emma arrived, she found her mother sitting at the kitchen table, her expression somber. "I wanted to let you know that your father and I have decided to officially separate," Karen said, her voice shaking. "It's what's best for us." Emma's heart sank. She had hoped that the counseling would lead to reconciliation, but now it felt like everything was falling apart. "Mom, I'm so sorry." Karen looked up, tears glistening in her eyes. "I know this is hard for you and Jake. But I want you to know that this isn't your fault. Your father and I tried, but it just didn't work out." Emma felt the weight of her mother's words. "What about the house? What happens to us?" "We'll figure it out," Karen said, her voice filled with determination. "I want you and Jake to know that you can always count on me. We'll get through this together, no matter what." As Emma left her mother's house, she felt a mix of sadness and relief. Their family was changing, but perhaps it was for the best. Chapter 11, Facing the Truth. That evening, Emma met Jake in their usual spot in the backyard. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the garden, but the atmosphere felt heavy with unspoken words. "Hey," Jake said, his voice low as he approached her. "How was your day?" Emma took a deep breath, her heart racing. "Mom and Dad are officially separating." Jake's expression shifted, a mix of surprise and sadness crossing his features. "I'm sorry, Em. I know how much you wanted them to work it out." "I did," she admitted, tears welling in her eyes. "But it's also a relief. I think they've been unhappy for a long time." Jake stepped closer, wrapping his arms around her. "You're right. Sometimes, it's better to let go than to hold on to something that's broken." As she melted into his embrace, Emma felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was the beginning of healing for all of them. But then the weight of their relationship loomed over her once more. She pulled away, searching his eyes for understanding. "Jake, we need to talk about us," she said, her voice trembling. "Now that everything's changing." "What do you mean?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "I think we need to figure out what we really want," she said, her heart racing. "With everything happening, we have to decide if we can still be us." Jake's gaze darkened, and he took a step back, his expression pained. "You're saying we should go back to pretending nothing happened?" "No, I'm not saying that," Emma rushed to explain. "I just think we need to be careful. We can't let our feelings complicate everything even more." "I don't want to lose you, Emma," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I can't just turn off what I feel. It's too late for that." Tears filled Emma's eyes as she felt the weight of their situation. "I don't want to lose you either, but I can't ignore the reality we're facing. Our family is falling apart, and we have to navigate that." Jake's face softened, and he stepped closer once more. "So what do we do now?" Emma took a deep breath, her heart racing. "I think we should take a break. Just to figure things out. I need to process everything, and I think you do too." Jake's expression shifted, disappointment flooding his features. "You think that's the answer? To walk away from what we have?" "I think it's the only way we can figure out who we are now," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't want to lose you, but I also don't want to lose myself in the process." Jake looked at her, hurt and confusion etched across his face. "So, you want to just stop everything? After everything we've shared?" Emma felt her heart shatter at the pain in his eyes. "I don't want to stop loving you, Jake. I just need some space to think. This is all so new and confusing. I can't just pretend it's normal when everything around us is changing." He sighed, running a hand over his face in frustration. "I get that things are complicated. But what if taking a break means losing you for good?" Tears streamed down Emma's cheeks as she struggled to find the right words. "I don't want to lose you either," but I can't let this situation consume us. We need to be honest with ourselves and with each other about what we want moving forward. Jake's gaze softened, and he stepped closer, gently wiping away her tears with his thumb. You're right. We both need time to think. I just wish it didn't have to be like this. Me too, she whispered, her heart aching at the thought of being apart. But we owe it to ourselves to figure out who we are without the weight of all this drama. Jake nodded slowly, his expression a mixture of resignation and understanding. Okay, then. I'll respect your decision. But just know that no matter what happens, you mean everything to me. Emma's heart swelled at his words, but the reality of their situation felt heavy in the air. And you mean everything to me, Jake. I just hope this break helps us find clarity. Chapter 12, The Distance Between Us. The days turned into weeks as Emma and Jake navigated their new arrangement. They still saw each other, but the intimacy of their previous connection was replaced with an awkward distance. Emma felt a constant ache in her chest, a longing for the bond they had once shared, but she knew that this time apart was necessary. At home, the atmosphere remained tense. Their parents were in the midst of their separation, and the house felt emptier than ever. Emma found herself caught between supporting her mother and grappling with her own feelings for Jake. She often lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, haunted by memories of their stolen moments together. One evening, Emma received a call from Jake. "Can we meet up?" he asked, his voice sounding strained. "Of course," she replied, her heart racing. A part of her feared what the conversation might entail, but she also felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this was the moment they could finally confront their feelings. When they met at their usual spot, the tension was palpable. Jake looked different, more serious, maybe even a little haunted. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he said as they sat down on the porch steps. "Me too," Emma admitted, her heart pounding. "What's on your mind?" "I've been thinking about us, about what we've been trying to avoid talking about," he said, his gaze intense. "I miss you, Emma. I miss us." Tears welled in Emma's eyes as she nodded. "I miss you too. Every day feels incomplete without you." Jake's expression softened, but there was a hint of frustration in his voice. "Then why are we still pretending? Why can't we just acknowledge what we feel?" "Because it's complicated," Emma exclaimed, her voice rising. "We can't ignore the fact that our parents are going through a huge change. If we rush back into this, it might destroy us both. Or it might bring us back together," Jake countered, his eyes blazing with emotion. "We can't keep running from our feelings just because it's inconvenient." Emma felt her heart race. "I don't want to run, Jake. I just want to be sure that what we're doing is right." "Right for whom?" he pressed, frustration evident in his voice. "For our parents? For society? Or for ourselves?" The silence that followed felt heavy with unspoken truths. Emma felt trapped in a whirlwind of emotions, torn between her love for Jake and her desire to keep her family intact. "Maybe I need more time," Emma finally said, her voice trembling. "I just can't dive back into something so intense without thinking it through." Jake's expression turned pained, and he looked away, his jaw clenched. "I can't keep waiting forever, Emma. I need to know if you're in this or not." "I don't want to lose you, but I can't promise anything right now," she said, her heart aching at the thought of pushing him away. "I just need to figure things out." Chapter 13, The Decision. Days turned into an agonizing blur as Emma wrestled with her feelings. The pressure of the situation weighed heavily on her, and she often found herself crying in the shower, feeling lost and alone. The distance between her and Jake felt insurmountable, and each passing day deepened the ache in her chest. One evening, Emma sat on her bed, scrolling through her phone when a text from Jake lit up the screen. "Can we talk?" Her heart raced. She knew this conversation was coming, and a part of her dreaded it. But she also felt an overwhelming desire to resolve the tension that had been building between them. When they met in the backyard later that night, the air was thick with anticipation. Jake stood there, looking both anxious and determined. "I've been thinking a lot about us," he said, his voice steady. "Me too," Emma replied, her heart pounding. I don't know how to move forward." Jake stepped closer, his expression earnest. "I can't keep pretending that I don't want you in my life. I love you, Emma. I've loved you for a long time and I can't." Chapter 15, Embracing the Future. With the weight of their secret lifted, Emma and Jake began to embrace their relationship openly. They spent more time together, finding joy in the little moments, sharing laughter, late-night talks, and stolen kisses under the stars. Their bond deepened, and every day felt like a new adventure. However, the complexities of their situation still lingered. They had to navigate their parents' ongoing separation and the emotional fallout that came with it. Emma often found herself torn between supporting her mother and nurturing her relationship with Jake. One evening, as they lay in the grass at their favorite spot in the backyard, Emma turned to Jake, her heart full. "I'm so glad we took the leap. I feel like I can finally be myself with you." Jake smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Me too. It feels like we're in this together, fighting against the odds. But we still have to face the reality of our family," Emma said, her voice tinged with concern. "I don't want to hurt anyone, especially Mom." "I get that. But we can't let their issues dictate our happiness," Jake replied. "We have to find a balance that works for us." Emma nodded, knowing he was right. They had to carve out their own path, even amidst the chaos. "I just hope we can navigate this without losing what we have." As weeks turned into months, Emma and Jake continued to strengthen their relationship. They learned to face the challenges head-on, communicating openly about their feelings and fears. Their parents' situation began to stabilize as well, with Karen starting to find her footing in her new life. Chapter 16, A New Chapter. One afternoon, Emma and Jake found themselves at a local cafe, sipping coffee and enjoying each other's company. The atmosphere was light and cheerful, a stark contrast to the tension they had faced just months prior. "Can you believe how far we've come?" Jake said, grinning as he looked at Emma. "It feels like a lifetime ago when everything was falling apart." Emma smiled back, her heart swelling with gratitude. "I know. I never thought we'd get to this point. I'm so grateful for you, Jake." Jake reached across the table, taking her hand in his. "And I'm grateful for you. You've shown me what it means to love and be loved, even in the midst of chaos." Just then, Emma's phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at the screen and saw a message from her mother. "Can we talk? I have something important to share." Emma's heart raced. "It's Mom. She wants to talk." Jake's expression turned serious. "Do you think it's about us?" "I don't know," Emma replied, feeling a mix of excitement and anxiety. "But I guess we'll find out." When they arrived at home, Emma found her mother sitting at the kitchen table, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Thank you for coming, you too," Karen said, looking between them. Emma exchanged a glance with Jake, and they both sat down, anticipation swirling in the air. "I wanted to let you both know that I've been doing a lot of thinking," Karen began, her voice steady but tinged with emotion. "After everything that's happened, I've realized that life is too short to hold on to resentment and fear. I want to be honest with you both about where I stand." Emma felt her heart race as she listened intently, squeezing Jake's hand under the table for support. "What do you mean, Mom?" she asked gently. "I've come to terms with your relationship," Karen said, her eyes meeting Emma's. "I may not fully understand it, and it may take me some time to adjust, but I want you to be happy. If Jake makes you happy, then I support you." Tears welled in Emma's eyes, and she felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Thank you, Mom. That means so much to us." Jake nodded, his expression serious but grateful. "I promise we'll be responsible and respectful. We want to make sure this doesn't complicate things for you." Karen smiled faintly, her gaze softening. Chapter 17, Embracing Change. As the days turned into weeks, Emma and Jake continued to navigate their relationship with a newfound sense of freedom. They spent more time together openly, and Emma felt lighter knowing that her mother supported them. Their bond deepened, and they found joy in the little moments that life offered. They explored new places, went on spontaneous adventures, and shared their dreams for the future. Emma found herself falling deeper in love with Jake, and each day felt like a new chapter in their story. One evening, as they walked along a quiet beach, the sun setting in the distance, Jake turned to Emma, a serious expression on his face. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about what we want for the future." Emma's heart raced. "What do you mean?" "I want to be with you, Em. I want to build a life together, despite everything we've faced. You're my partner, and I can't imagine my life without you," Jake said earnestly. Tears filled Emma's eyes as she took in his words. "I want that too, Jake. I want to face whatever challenges come our way, together." Jake smiled, his eyes shining with determination. "Then let's make it happen. Let's be each other's support as we navigate this new path." As they stood there, the waves crashing gently against the shore, Emma felt a sense of peace wash over her. They had come so far, and together, they could face anything life threw their way. Chapter 18, The Future Beckons. Over the next few months, Emma and Jake continued to embrace their relationship while supporting each other through the ups and downs of life. They celebrated small victories and comforted each other during tough times. Their love grew stronger, and with every challenge, they learned to communicate openly and honestly. As summer turned to fall, Emma found herself reflecting on their journey. She had come to understand the complexities of love, family, and the importance of being true to oneself. They had faced adversity, but they had also discovered the beauty of vulnerability and connection. One evening, Emma and Jake sat on the porch, watching the leaves change color as autumn set in. Jake reached for her hand, intertwining his fingers with hers. "What do you think the future holds for us?" he asked, his voice soft. "I think it's full of possibilities," Emma replied, a smile spreading across her face. "We've built something beautiful together, and I believe we can navigate whatever comes our way." Jake nodded, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I want to continue growing with you, both as individuals and as partners. We can take on the world together." Emma's heart soared at the thought. "Yes, we can. I want to travel, explore, and create memories with you. I want to experience life to the fullest, hand in hand." Jake grinned, his eyes sparkling. "Then let's make a plan. We can start small, maybe a weekend getaway or a trip somewhere we've always wanted to visit." "I love that idea," Emma exclaimed, her excitement bubbling over. "Let's start looking into places we can go together." As they began discussing their plans, the feeling of hope and possibility enveloped them like a warm embrace. Emma knew that life would still have its challenges, but with Jake by her side, she felt ready to face anything. Epilogue, Whispers of Desire. As the seasons changed, Emma and Jake continued to build a life together, navigating the complexities of love and family. They supported each other through challenges, celebrated each other's successes, and embraced the beauty of their relationship. Their parents, learning to co-parent and communicate effectively, found a new rhythm in their lives. Emma felt a sense of relief knowing that her family was healing, allowing her to focus on her relationship with Jake. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, watching the stars twinkle above, Emma leaned her head on Jake's shoulder. "Can you believe how far we've come?" she said softly. Jake smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "It's been a journey, that's for sure. But I wouldn't trade it for anything." Emma looked up at him, feeling a rush of love and gratitude. "You've shown me what it means to love deeply and passionately, despite the challenges. I'll always cherish what we have." "Me too, Em," Jake replied, his voice filled with sincerity. "Our love is a whisper of desire that echoes through everything we've faced. And I have no doubt that it will continue to grow and thrive." As they sat together, enveloped in each other's warmth, Emma felt a sense of peace wash over her. They had weathered the storms and emerged stronger, ready to embrace whatever the future held. Together, they would continue to write their story, one filled with love, resilience, and endless possibilities. Thank you for watching part 1 of Whispers of Desire. Be sure to subscribe to be notified when part 2 is uploaded. Lives Apart.